Hello and welcome to Mediumship Matters with me, Hannah McIntyre. And today I have got another great special guest for you. It's Hailey Lowe Fennell, who's speaking to me from miles away over the other side of the world, who has agreed to come on and talk to us about her work with spirit and her journey. Hi, Hailey.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We're excited to have you and hear your story. Now, you got in contact with me when I was asking for spirit stories, but I thought as you actually work as a medium, I would dedicate a whole episode just to you. How nice is that? And we would talk a little bit about it. So tell us about your first experience with the spirit world. How did you get started?
Oh, sure. Well, I got started. My very first experiences were when I was little, but I didn't think of psychic mediumship as a job. I didn't think that that was a possibility. But I definitely have always been connected, though I only know that now looking back.
Same.
Yeah. It's funny, like all of the little stories that just have started to flood into my mind. I'm like, oh, that was, seeing spirit or hearing spirit or being connected. But the most prominent one that really stands out to me is I come from an abusive and toxic childhood. And when I was little, I used to always wonder like how worth it was or what life was going to be like, and not so sure of what my path was going to be. And unfortunately, it was in like a very down part of my life. And I just kept asking myself, gosh, like what's going on? Or is this even worth it? And I kept hearing this voice that was not mine, telling me to keep going. It said, keep going, it gets better. And it was just very adamant, especially the part, it gets better. And then I would ask, well, when does it get better? And I always got the same answer: when you're old enough to leave home, when you leave home, it will get better. And then sure enough, I was 18 and I left home. And I had some of my first experiences not worrying about what was going on at home, and my world perspective shifted and things got better, like a lot better. And then I continued to have some other small spiritual experiences. But it wasn't until I decided to become a psychic medium that I look back on those moments and think, wow, that wasn't just me. That was my guides speaking to me through me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I kind of believe that we're a part of that too. Like we have that same intuition. At the time, it sounded like a voice that's other than mine. I now talk to myself in my guides and it sounds more like me.
Well, they probably needed it to sound different, so you believe.
Yeah.
Was it always the same voice? Did it change?
It was always the same voice. And I kind of want to say voice with quotation marks because it was more of like a knowing in my head.
Yeah.
It wasn't so audible outside of myself, but it was in my head and in a different pattern than maybe I would relate to my own thoughts.
I love it. And do you believe that that voice saved you, helped you, got you to where you are now? What do you think your life would have looked like if you hadn't heard it?
Yeah, I for sure. I think that that voice saved me. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it got me through some of the darkest times and has brought me to where I am now. Yeah, really, truly.
Love it.
Yeah,
And
it gave.
so you're 18, you escape, you leave home, you manage to survive. I mean, 18 years is a long time to be in that situation. So I'm not surprised that Spirit pulled out all the stops to communicate with you. And of course, I think they do that for lots of people. It's just whether you're actually able to hear it or not and communicate with it. So thank goodness that you could. You leave home at 18, there's this whole world out there. You go, thank goodness for that. Maybe another word in there instead of goodness. And you're out there. How do you become a medium? How does that unfold for you?
It took me some time actually. I think I gained more perspective about what my own personal ideas of spirituality were after I left home. I was raised Episcopalian, but didn't resonate with that totally. And then I left home and I just started to really come up with what I wanted for myself. And I think that helped a little bit. But then I got into the art world and I was an artist for quite some time and successful for where I was at for a young artist. And then I had my two kids and I had this moment after my second child was born where everything just shut down. I didn't have any interest in art. I was a visual multimedia artist. And so I worked a lot with photography and graphic design, and I just couldn't get into it at all. And so I turned to what I had harnessed in at that point as my own spirituality and what I call the universe. I turned to the universe and said, okay, well, what will you have me do? If it's not being an artist, which is already a dream job, then what is it? And I kept getting signs from all over the place to go into psychic mediumship. And I thought it was crazy. I was like, how is that a job? What is this? Who are the types of people that do this? But then the universe just kept showing me, well, anyone can do it. Anyone has this ability. You just have to choose to do it. And it took about a year and a half, but by the time I turned 33, I was like, okay, I'm done. Like I'm a psychic medium and this is what I'm going to do. And it took me choosing to do it to be it, if that makes sense.
I love this. It's really interesting because before I came on to record with you, I had a spiritual assessment with a client, and I was talking to her about, she's been in development for ages and ages and ages and ages. And now she's just hit that limit of what she can do with her mediumship until she steps up and says, right, I'm going to do the work now, not the learning work, but the actual work, and be a professional medium. And they kept saying, you know, this, you've got to do it because nothing's going to happen till you do. So that kind of ties in with what you're saying. You have to step into that zone to accept the energy and the upgrades and the information.
Yeah.
So did you study? How did you develop in that year and a half?
I did. So I was lucky enough that there's a local teacher here in Charleston. Her name's Carol Cottrell. And she's wonderful. And she really changed my perspective of how to work in this world. And I love the way that she viewed it. And she was a great jumping off point. So I was with her for a while, and I was also with Tony Stockwell and a few other teachers, but the two of them were great in kind of expanding my view of what psychic mediumship could be.
Yeah.
And so I've trained with them, and then I trained with Tony for trance work. And right now I'm still working with Tony.
Okay, so trance, let's talk about trance. For those people that don't know, what would you describe trance as?
Oh, sure. So for me, and I think it's different for everyone, but for me, it's like a really deep blend with spirit. So when I go into trance or when I give readings, lots of people will notice that I almost close my eyes throughout the whole reading. It's kind of like I can't help it, but it just helps me blend a little bit deeper with spirit. I tend to kind of feel them within my own body. And sometimes if I'm in a really light trance, they'll just have me kind of sit a certain way or do certain hand gestures that they would have done in life. It helps me feel into their personality, who they were in life. And then a deeper level of trance for me would be where I really let go of all mindfulness and really let them communicate through me. And sometimes they talk through me, sometimes they don't, but they're able to send messages or healing or communicate with my sitter or the people I'm with through me in any way that is best for them.
Amazing. So you can do trance where you are moving into that deep blend with somebody's loved one in the spirit world, their spirit guides. Does it just depend who steps in, or?
Yeah, I'd say my specialty is, or where I find my gifts are, is those who have passed away. So sometimes I'll get guided messages through that, but my belief is, and my experiences, as well as most people who are psychic mediums, that those who have passed away also kind of see, hear, and know everything we need to hear today. And so sometimes I feel like our loved ones have moved into the spot where they act as guides for us. And when I feel that happen, I'll always share with someone, okay, like your loved one who you know physically from life has now moved on, and they're also acting as guide for you. But I tend to stay there. Very rarely do I ever connect in with someone's guide that they've never met before in life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So evidential but trance evidential, which is pretty cool. And so that lovely blend. So, and it's that communication, isn't it, of sitting in that energy and being in the presence of your loved one again and receiving that healing. So all pretty amazing. So talk to me about your personal development from working with spirit. What has changed for Hailey from obviously who you were before you started this work to who you are now?
Oh, yeah. Great question. So I feel like before I started, I thought that psychic medium work was going to be, I don't know, maybe more like that image that you have from the movies or television. And I was maybe asking for something more predominant to happen. Like, okay, like I want to see spirit while I'm sitting with this person. And very quickly I realized, oh no, it's more about how deep can I trust myself, that anything that's coming into my energetic field or anything that's coming into my mind is really for the sitter in front of me and isn't for me. And if we want it to be easy, if we want mediumship to be easy, then it's almost like we have to integrate it into everyday life. It's not going to be some sort of phenomenon all the time. It's going to be, well, you can just sit with someone and trust that what you're saying is going to be for them. And it takes practice to differentiate my own ego or my own thoughts when I'm sitting with someone. But the more I do it and the more I trust, the more I'm able to give those messages to them. But it feels very much the same as my own thoughts, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Oh, I love this. So, talking about phenomena and expecting to see the physical, I mean, you've listened to this podcast, that was me growing up watching Ghost Whisperer and Medium and being like, right, when am I going to see them? When am I going to see the dead people? Where's are they? I want them now. And learning the hard way that it was not a level that I needed to get to in my mediumship. It's just not how it works most of the time. But you are yourself, aren't you, starting a podcast, House Guest? Tell us a bit about what that's going to be about.
Oh, sure. I'm excited. I just, so it's called House Guest, and I'm based in Charleston, South Carolina, and we're rich in history, and there's lots of old mansions and buildings and jails here, that are, I'm using like air quotes, haunted. And I just have a different perspective on what haunted means, especially now doing what I do. So the idea is I'll be giving some readings, and some will just be over Zoom and you'll be able to hear the audio from them, but some will be in these haunted places, and giving readings to particular people who are going to meet me there. But layered on top of that is also the idea that I'm going to share the perspective of what haunted really means, which in my experience now is sometimes we'll have spirits come to us and they'll give us information as to who they were in the past or what we know of them. And it can feel fearful at first. And then I always like to give this reminder that if it feels fearful, it's really just coming from our ego and our perspective hasn't shifted yet. But if we can shift our perspective, then that spirit is going to be able to move into the greater, grander, more supportive and loving messages that they actually have for us. And so, for example, if we're in the old Charleston City County Jail and we feel a spirit coming in and it kind of feels ominous, we might think of it that way just because that's where our mind is at the moment. And as soon as we're like, okay, well, what we know about the spirits here are the hard times that they went through. So they're sharing that information with us so we can connect in with them. And then we can shift into who they really were and who they are now in spirit. And they're going to have so much more to share with us that's going to help us on our path and with our own clarity, that if we just open our hearts enough and we open our minds enough, we're going to be so thankful that we're able to connect in with them, even in a strange place like that.
I love it. So for real clarity, do you believe in ghosts? There's the question.
Yeah, sure. I believe in ghosts. I think I use that like ghost spirit kind of interchangeably. Do I believe in like hauntings? Not so much, not in the way that people traditionally believe in it. Though I do believe sometimes we allow ourselves to be haunted. Sometimes maybe that perspective, we're holding on to it for a reason, or it's all we have so far. We haven't quite learned how to shift out of that for some reason. And it's okay to be in that. There's no judgment. It's okay to be in that place for as long as you need, or to even put up a boundary and say, it's not for me. Please don't connect in with me. But yeah, I think maybe feeling haunted haunted or accepting a place as haunted is a choice.
Agreed, because I can't think of anything. I mean, we know, don't we, that spirit are so, I mean, just so much more than we give them credit for in our human perspective of them. You can't imagine the wondrous intelligence of the spirit world allowing someone to be trapped somewhere for hundreds of years. But equally, I've had some fantastic experiences in historic places, walking with spirits that have a connection to it. I walked around a garden of a stately home once with the gardener, who was telling me about how it all used to look. And then I found some old pictures of it in the museum, and it was everything he'd been telling me. And it was, like you say, so filled with love and so filled with knowledge and connection to the earth, but magic. But he wasn't there going, whoa. You know, he was like, I used to have some hedges here and it looked like this, and it was just really cool. So I love that you're doing that, because I think it's really needed.
Yeah.
I go on.
I don't know if it's like a haunting of a place, but more of like a loving of a place that they loved, or just a way for them, a starting point for them to connect in with you is all they need.
And I think as well, it's understandable that when we have lost people in spirit, we want to communicate. You know, I started this journey from communicating with my loved ones that I'd lost. But as you go down the development path, you realize that that can also be quite limiting, and that there is this whole rich tapestry of amazing energies out there that you can communicate with. So using the space to call them in, because they've got a connection to it, is fabulous. If you ever want to come to the UK, you can come and do my house. My house is old. That'd be so fun.
Done. I'll be there.
So yeah, I completely get that. I was watching the Squamish medium. She had a reel or a talk she was doing for her podcast, I think, recently, which was, imagine a haunting show, but imagine it with beautiful music rather than, you know, scary beat of the heartbeat, but just imagine it with a loving, beautiful music in the background. So this sounds like an amazing adventure. I can't wait to listen to it and see what you do.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
You're going to have to tread that careful line, aren't you, with people who invite you to spaces because they believe that it's haunted, because it's always a difficult thing when people really have that belief system that it is something out to get them. And you're just like, no, it's your nan. She's just saying, hey. Like it's hard for people to open up to that, isn't it?
Yeah, or even for people sometimes to connect in with someone that maybe they didn't get along with in life or had tension with in life. I mean, when I was first starting out and wanting to connect in with my loved ones, of course, I'm going to pick the comfortable ones, the ones that, you know, my loving grandma and grandfather who would never hurt me. But it took me some time to connect in with some of the other people, some of my other relatives who have passed away, who I didn't have a great relationship in life. But man, are their messages the best to hear, because I feel like they now have such a perspective, not only of who they were in life, but also almost like how to avoid people who are like them. They're like, ooh, stay away from that person, because it's kind of like who I was at this age or something. And they mean it in a loving way. And so I love sharing that perspective with people. That really are loved ones, even the ones that we had troublesome relationships with, truly are different on the other side, and really see, hear, and know it all.
Yeah, definitely. And that's very healing, isn't it? Very, very healing. If you're able to just even receive a word from somebody that has caused you harm here, it's very healing for everybody, even if you can just take their sorry and nothing else from them. Amazing. I love it. I love it. This sounds like it's going to be really, really good fun. And I can't wait to hear your experiences around the places. And of course, there'll be some lovely validations you'll be able to get if you're getting spirits in with information that you'll be able to check later. And yeah, this is bringing out all my history buff as well. You're going to have a great time. What fun. I love it. I love it. So, in all your work with the spirit world and everything like that, what do I want to ask you first? I've got so many questions bubbling away here. Let's go with this one. What would you suggest to somebody who's starting their journey? What's your number one tip for a developing medium?
Oh gosh, I'm going to say to not be afraid to be wrong. Just to, I think the more willing you are to trust yourself, and the quicker you can attain that trust. And then even when you're wrong, there's such good lessons in that. It's like, ooh, like I can see why that bit of information I gave wasn't quite right. Where could I have gone better? Or how did that feel in my body or in my mind? Or how did I visualize it or see it or hear it? And why is that coming from my ego instead of from a heart opened reading for my sitter? So yeah, just to not be afraid to be wrong. We all are. Yeah. Sometimes I still am. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, me too. And also it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to misinterpret. I always say, because we all say, don't we, it's like playing charades with energy. But if you were playing charades in real life, you don't go, oh, I got a no for that, so I've ruined the entire game. You're happy to chuck out guesses, and it's part of the natural process of it, but we tie ourselves up in knots. So I love that. I love that. So I know we've kind of touched on it here, but tell us something that you wish everybody knew about mediumship. What's a misconception you'd like to break?
Oh, that's a great question. Maybe that we, you know what, that we like see them, that they're like real ghosts in front of us, able to just give us exact sentences and memories and all that. It really isn't like that. I have never seen a spirit while giving a reading, though I'm very open to it, and I tell the spirit world that all the time.
Message me if it ever happens for you. I'll be so jealous.
Yeah, I know. But that happens for me sometimes when I'm falling asleep or in the middle of the night. But really, in a reading, it's not like they're coming and standing in front of me. It's my job to organize them in my own mind. And when people see me kind of like pointing to people or kind of looking a certain way, it's really just my mind that has separated them out so that it's easier for me to talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I do that. I place them. But I'm not really placing a spirit. I'm just know that I've got bossy grandma here and quiet grandma here. And I just know that that's how, and I label them all with ridiculous names, which is probably really offensive, but no one seems to mind too much because it just helps me get all my ducks in a row how I want it. I love it. So yeah, talking about apparitions, because we know there's lots of people who've seen apparitions. What's your personal take on them?
I mean, okay, so I totally think they're real. I have started to do this new thing, where sometimes like in a doorway, you kind of see something and you turn real quick and then it's gone. So I have this working theory that it is actually spirit and they're working with our perspective, like kind of playing with us, like, ooh, like, are you ready to see me? And it's just a really easy way for them to give us a quick visual of themselves. And we can have a choice in that moment where we can either turn and say, okay, it was nothing. There's nothing there. Or what I've started to do recently is I turn and say, okay, hi, I see you for a second. I you're here. Thanks for coming and visit. If you have any messages for me, you're welcome to give them to me now or later when I actually have time, because sometimes I don't have time.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the point, isn't it? I often get stuff like that when I'm busy on something else. If I'm seeking it, if I'm going, I want to see, I get absolutely zippity doodle. But if I'm busy rushing around trying to do something and my brain is elsewhere and I'm not seeking, that's when I go, who's in the doorway? And I go, oh, I see you. So I love that. I was talking to Spirit earlier because I was on a dog walk and I kept seeing this same lady everywhere I went. She was somewhere. And then it's the first time that I've really just felt like I thought, oh God, I sound like I need to be hospitalized. But where I started to see like the breakdown of the physical. And I was saying to Spirit, like, I just feel like the world isn't very solid right now. And we were talking about it and I was like, she is real. And they were like, well, what's real? And I was like, but she is a person, a physical person. And then I went, or is she a ghost? And they went, you're all ghosts. And then just backed off and left me just going, what? Just ricocheting around on this dog walk with my mind blown. But it's so funny that we're talking about this today when they were doing that to me earlier. But exactly that. It's craziness, really. The whole thing is nuts and I love it. I live for it. So what about people who see, I know this is purely because you're doing your house guest podcast, and I've been listening to that Uncanny podcast I was telling you about. So now I'm just full of questions that I wish that somebody would ask on Uncanny, and you're getting them all, Hailey. Sorry about this, but what about people who see, like, I don't know, the Victorian lady walking up the stairs or the child in the graveyard? What's your take on those?
Yeah, so I think that that is just what we know of that area or that house, that specific spot, and also what we expect to see. So if that's what our idea of spirit is, and that's what we expect to see in that space, and we're open enough to see it, then that's exactly what we're going to see. And then if we want to connect in with that Victorian lady, she might then show us how she decides to appear now. Maybe she's a more modern woman. Maybe she really likes her Victorian look, right? And so that's kind of why I think spirits first come to us in certain ways. It just kind of depends on where we're at mentally and what we want.
Well, I was talking to a friend about this the other day, because we were saying that when spiritualism first started, everybody's spirit guide was a Native American, you know, silver birch, running river, this, that, and the other. But of course, as we have developed, we are more willing to understand that there are other spiritual people in the world who've lived other spiritual lives and received different ways of spirit. And so, yeah, I love that. You're right. It's that limited expectation. I also have been thinking about stone tape theory. Have you heard of this? Which is like the energy of a place replays.
Okay, cool.
Which is why you get sometimes apparitions that are walking on a floor that no longer exists. So it looks like they're half a body and things like that. And I find that a really fascinating concept too, especially when I'm on dog walks and I feel like the physical nature of the earth is breaking down before my very eyes. But that kind of idea that we can leave an energy behind that isn't a spirit, that isn't the intelligence of the spirit world, but is just replaying the same thing. And I find that a fascinating concept.
Oh, me too. I have a friend in Charleston who actually, like, I feel like houses can retain energy and memories.
Yeah.
And so, and it freaks her out. And I've talked to her about it, but I have a friend in Charleston who at night will hear a horse's hoof kind of brushing up against the porch, like kicking the porch a little bit. And it used to be like it's kind of, she lives in like a carriage house behind a house. And so her house would have been used as the place where you tie up your horse.
Yeah.
So she hears that every once in a while. And I just think, well, I just think your house has memory and maybe enjoyed having that role for such a long time.
I love it. See, there's so much we don't know. There's so much more to. So I know obviously you live in this very historic, rich place with, you know, huge amounts of things that have happened. What experiences have you had? Have you had any?
Yeah, sure. You know what though? I'm trying to think if I have some at home in my own house. I'm not from Charleston. And I think since I've had kids, I've been like, all right, you got to let me sleep.
Yeah, for sure.
But I will say, so I had one one of my more prominent ones was when I was in college in Boulder in Colorado. And I was a freshman in college and I was really, really sick. And my older sister said, get out of the dorms and come stay at my place for the night. And I was doing better, but I had fallen asleep and I have really bad eyesight. So when I take my contacts out, it's like everything's super blurry.
Same. Yep.
Super, super bad. And so, of course, I'd taken my contacts out. I was asleep in her bed and she went to go stay at a friend's house. And in the middle of the night, she walks into the room and she sits on the edge of my bed. And I kind of sit up and I'm staring at her like, are you okay? Do you want me to scoot over? And she's like, no, it's okay, honey. Go back to bed. And so I go back to sleep and then I wake up the next morning and my sister comes into the room again, or so I think, and she's wearing something totally different. I'm like, when did you have time to change clothes or were you already here? And she said, what are you talking about? I said, well, last night you came in the middle of the night. Where did you go? And she's like, I was not here. And she said, what was this person wearing? And I told her, I was like, well, she's wearing this white shirt and these bell-bottom jeans, which was so bizarre to me. And my sister said, that wasn't me, but that is Mary. They called her Mary, that's not her real name. We found out later. They just called her the ghost Mary. And she occasionally visits some of the girls in that house.
Oh, and she's all loving. And she came to look after you because you were poorly.
Yes. And then a few years later, I actually was staying in the same house, and I was in the same room. And it's one of those rooms where two people sleep in there. And I had a roommate, and I moved in first, and it was a week until my roommate came, and it was all quiet. And then my roommate came, and every single night it sounded like she was unpacking and repacking drawers and was so noisy. And after the fifth night, I woke up in the morning and I said, Jen, I love you, but you've got to stop organizing your stuff in the middle of the night. It's waking me up. And she said, no, you've got to stop organizing stuff in the middle of the night. You're waking me up. And we just had this aha moment of, oh my gosh, we think it's Mary. And then after that night, nothing. We didn't
wonder
hear
what
anything.
she was doing.
I think she was like, you're back. I'm just gonna kind of play with
Yeah,
your
let you know. We've got so my friend who got me into all of this stuff, we've got the Baptist preacher who walks around this house, who used to live here, and he's got really strong opinions about where we have furniture, and you can feel his displeasure if it's not where he thinks it should be. And I have to say, look, mate, you've been dead 100 years. It's my home now. I've got a very big mortgage for this house. I will put my furniture where I want it. But he does make it known. It's really funny. I love it. I love it. Oh, amazing. So what's next for you? You've obviously got your podcast. Where are you setting your sights next on your journey?
Well, I'd love to do more larger group readings. I do kind of like eight-ish people group readings right now. And so I'm really trying to put myself out there more and do more group readings and larger group readings. I get a lot of energy from doing one-on-one readings for sure as well, but I get a lot of energy just from doing the work that I do. So I'm trying to be more brave, putting myself out there a little bit more.
You just have to book a venue and just do it. That's what
Yeah.
I always do. I book it on an impulse. Everyone always says to me, how are you so brave? And I'm like, I'm not brave. I just have a funny 5 minutes and I book a venue. And then once I've booked it, I've got to sell the tickets because I've got to make it worth booking it. I've booked it now. And that is honestly the way I do it. So just book somewhere, find somewhere and get started. I love platform. I love audience readings. You will love it. So good.
Oh, thank you. I love that piece of advice. And that's so true. It's like, I have this little note in my phone and I've had it for a few years now. And every day it just pops up and it says, go a little bit outside of your depth. And it's just like this reminder of, that's right. Like I can take one more step. And I think to the spirit world, as long as you're taking steps, the ball is going to keep rolling.
For sure.
In anything that anyone wants to do in life.
Amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you for coming on and talking to us. It's been really fascinating. Sorry that I just hit you so hard with all the ghost stuff, but I'm just so interested with your house guest stuff. It sounds amazing. Can't wait to listen. And thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, I love it. And hopefully we'll get you on sometime soon too. And that will be like a really fun conversation. And we can talk more about ghosts.
Yeah, excellent. I better do some study then. Amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.